Hello, everyone. So today's webinar is on the topic leveraging the power of Team Labs. My name is Arif, and I am currently the head of innovation and STEAM department at Y Labs. I would request all of you to make it slightly interactive. So whenever I require any answers, so I would, raise a question, or I would ask you to use the chat to reply on answers, and we can probably take it forward from there. Okay, so again, apologies for the delay, and I would like to begin today's webinar. Today's points we will be discussing is, of course, we are going to introduce what a STEM education is and how it is compared to the traditional education. We'll also talk about the STEAM labs, what, why, and how. We will also see the innovative and creative side of STEAM labs in education and how it can help schools and teachers to implement STEAM labs in their schools. And is it the right time to adopting STEAM labs or not? Of course, we will also discuss in detail why STEAM labs fail and how to find the triumph in failure and how this will impact the future when they are adults and they are going to universities, colleges, and so on. So we'll be discussing these points. Uh, yeah. So starting with what is STEM education, you probably must have heard about the acronym STEM everywhere. It's a well-known abbreviative which stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And this was introduced early in the 21st century, and it was a way to include the most rapid growing industries in US economy. So they realized that the other jobs compared to the STEM jobs, it was rapidly growing, almost double the rate, and they needed to ramp up this technology innovation, and they thought this is the way we should start it. We should start at a very young age, and that's how the STEM education came into play. And this movement from USA have started, and now it is accepted worldwide, and everyone is trying to integrate these education frameworks of STEM, and it is quite a buzzing word at the moment. So in a nutshell, people began to recognize that it was time to start preparing our youth, our economy for the future by helping students of all ages develop these 21st century skills that will be needed to for them to be successful and will play an effective role in the future workspace. Fast forward, years starting from 1957, that is when uh, so yeah, so okay, I can see some people trying to control my screen. Okay. Yeah. So the STEM acronym, as it was introduced in 2001, but its actual initial emphasis was made when the Soviet launched the rocket Sputnik, the first satellite to orbit the Earth in 1957. And since then, there has been an improved emphasis on science and technology, and that is where US and Russia has been in a war to try to out force each other in the education department and how they will put forward. So it started from 1957 when science and technology got emphasis. In 2001, STEM was introduced. Previously, it was known as SMET. Now it is rearranged to call it STEM, and it's much more easier to be called. And now, since already 20 years has passed, and you would know every school, everywhere you look at, any companies you look at, they will focus on the STEM, and it's such a buzzword in the world of education. So, as repeated tasks are eroded by technology and outsourcing, the ability to solve novel problems has been increasingly vital. And this is one of the reasons why our education system is currently not appropriate for the students. So the traditional system of standardizing, the area of education where we are trying to test, students based on what they know, is what students don't need at this current age and moment, because it is plagued by very pervasive or systematic compound global challenges, and students are actually not benefiting from this education system because as I mentioned, a lot of repeating tasks are completely taken over by technology currently, and students should be able to solve problems at this moment instead of knowing a thing and trying to memorize it. So that is where the change is required in the current education scenario. Of course, I found this quote very interesting. If you design a system to do something specific, don't be surprised if it does. And if you're trying to run an education system based on standardization and conformity, which will suppress knowingly that a person's individuality, imagination, creativity will be suppressed. So we should also not be surprised that that is why it doesn't work. So if we are doing certain things in a certain way, in a specific manner, we can't expect students to be problem solvers all of a sudden. So there is a requirement, and we need to focus enough on teaching students to solve real world problems, and that is very very collaborative in manner. So it is not, we don't want students to do certain discoveries, find out something which they have found out or hypothesized, and they did some experiments on it, and we want students to be in a collaborative environment, so the teacher, their peers, everyone knows of their findings. It is not something like old ages, we talk about discoveries and we want to keep it within ourselves. Now is a collaborative environment, and STEM is actually providing that. So as you can see, how can STEM solve this problem? Of course, many education experts regard STEM as the essential component of 21st century education. And the US Department of Education has also mentioned that, in this ever changing, increasingly complex world, we would want our nation's youth to, bring that knowledge and skills to solve problems. So we want students to enhance these skills, transfer these skills, gather evidences when they are, doing or make sense of this information which they gather and make decisions on this. So this is what we want from the students at the end of the day, because this is what will lead them to in their future careers as well. So it plays a very vital role. Even if you talk about the COVID public health crisis, you would notice a lot of students in the high school have created ventilators out of just the plastic robotic kits which they have in as part of their STEM resources. So a lot of student has thought and how to tackle such kind of situations, and how we can collaboratively make sure the students are actually benefiting and trying to solve a problem, and STEM can actually offer that. So as the education world explores strategies to equip students with skills and knowledge, so they need to be successful innovators in this 21st century. And that's why the emphasis on STEM, the educational discipline where students are engaged on around the subjects of science, technology, engineering, and math is very, very important. And that is why a lot of organization, education frameworks, education bodies have created a lot of STEM frameworks for schools to adapt to. And the major reason for that is we want students, and this is according to National Education Association, we need to focus on the four primary skills area for any success we are looking at. So that is critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, creativity, and innovation. And somehow, as opposed to traditional models of teaching, the STEM framework blurs the lines between the disciplines in order to encourage higher level of creativity, effectiveness when it comes to problem solving. So, for example, if you are giving a future engineer the skill to visualize and sketch out his ideas, will make him more effective in the job down the road. So that is where the STEM framework comes in, and this is where that entire blurring of the line where the we are focusing on just on science or just on maths is gone, and where we can cross curriculum link can be integrated and it can be incorporated as a STEM curriculum, and we can easily adopt to project based learning in the school day. And I mean, I can pretty much tell you from now that within the next 10-15 years, the education system will quite change completely. We will not have, and a lot of schools have adopted as well, will not have books. They will be more gauged on what they are doing as a hands-on project compared to what they used to and have a test for them. So this entire goal of STEM based learning is to help students develop the skills which they need to be successful in future. So regardless of the specific role of industry, it is now critical that when they go off to college or they enter any workforce, they are available with that set of well-rounded skills which will allow to adapt to any evolving or fast paced environment. Yeah, so we have come to the next slide, which is STEM or STEAM. And all of you must be noticing, I myself is getting confused over, saying it's STEM or STEAM. The reason being, there recently has been an addition of A, which is why the STEAM comes into, picture. So the addition of A actually means the art, and it is added to the original STEM discipline to create STEAM, which is important in part because the practices such like modeling, developing explanation or engaging in critique and evaluation, argumentation. There is some kind of a noise. I'll just word that person. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so as I was mentioning, the addition of art is very important because a lot of modeling or any kind of they have to explain or develop any, they have to engage in critique, enabling critique and evaluation or argumentation in that process. This element is very underemphasized. And in the context of science and maths, you would notice any student learns a science or a math, if they are even eventually going on to do a PhD as well, a lot of these subjects don't emphasize on the art, where they have to actually find out how there can be an symbiosis between the arts and science. And arts and science and technology actually go hand in hand very well. Without arts, your student cannot be a successful, because they cannot explain what they have found out or what they have done. And this entire STEAM word also was, one of it was added to the original STEM framework, mainly because of the Rhode Island School of Design. And they found out, and their president itself, they found out that, they emphasized the idea that design thinking, creativity, and are essential ingredients of innovation, and arts is very, very important for, overall innovation as it is. So STEAM labs, of course, it is programmed to design to accommodate each grade. And at this current age and time, students of very young age, starting from even kindergarten, are exposed to such kind of, STEAM resources. So students are actually exposed to a lot of STEAM resources at the very young age. If you say even at home, they all have Lego blocks, which they are, inevitably they are building their motor skills, they are learning how to do certain constructions and so on. So even though US and other countries, Europe countries, even the Middle East, who have adapted for the last 6-7 years STEM, why there is still a problem? Why even the frameworks and even trying to integrate STEM learning using either resources or as an extra additional classes, or even after school programs, why it doesn't do as well compared to what it should have been? So the lie, when we looked into the numbers, of course, in other parts of the world where India and even Middle East, the sample size is too small. But in US, since it has been done, it's been started from a long time, and a study by Microsoft actually suggests that why they, even though we are talking about these frameworks and so on, a very less, a small percentage of US students are being exposed. And the numbers say that 1 out of 5 have decided for a STEM career in middle school or earlier. So you can see around, almost 21% that makes up, and 4 in 5, students have found out that they were interested in high school. So we shouldn't wait. You shouldn't let students wait so long where they are actually coming to high school, where they are getting the interest towards STEM subjects, or even though any kind of STEM career. And 83% of the high school students feel that their K-12 education did not prepare them well, for their STEM careers or the university level STEM subjects. So which shows a huge gap, why students are actually leave not getting interested in STEM careers. And at the time when they're actually passing out of grade 12, a lot of students feel that they are not prepared well to go to the real world where they are actually learning some STEM careers, or engineering, scientist, or any of these aspects or disciplines. And the next data also shows a very interesting thing, which shows that in US alone, 42% have changed their subject or lost interest in it while doing their bachelor's or master's. So which is a huge number. A lot of out of this 42%, around 60% of them has actually transferred from the STEM career and went into something else where they feel it is much more easier, and it is easier to cope for them. So it is very, very interesting. Even though students are getting used to this STEM skill on a daily basis, a very, very small percentage are actually getting influenced, and they are actually getting exposed to the proper STEAM education. So this comes to the point, what is a STEAM lab? So STEAM lab is a whole integrated learning environment for learning. The interesting thing about a STEAM lab is, it is everything, a separate entity completely for schools. They don't have to focus on integrating their theory at this moment, or changing to a STEM framework, and doing a lot of work in their frameworks itself, or following a CBSE curriculum, for example. They don't have to modify a lot. A STEAM lab can be an entirely integrated learning environment, which is a completely different entity. They don't have to worry about what is to be done there, because this is an environment for completely hands-on learning. And this is where learning can be personalized and motivated to engage all types of students. And this STEAM lab is actually the solution to allow students to learn, explore, collaborate, create, and problem solve. So in the STEM lab, students acquire the learning skills of the 21st century by participating in projects that cultivate critical thinking, problem solving, collaborating, communicating, raising that intellectual curiosity, and understanding the flexibility of working with others as well. So this entire environment which STEM lab creates actually provides them the real world, and this actually goes far more than what getting exposed to STEM education here and there, because this environment gives them that entire environment where the person in their career would actually feel. They are using equipments which a normal engineer or a scientist would be using. They are using latest technology which the latest companies also provide. So this actually provides that entire project based learning environment to develop the STEM skills, and this will also help them applying technology to design their own projects. So this is why I would recommend, and as a head of STEM department also, so we usually focus a lot on the STEM labs which can benefit schools as it is. So we come to the next slide, which talks about why build a STEM lab. So of course, within the past decades, a lot of schools have been trying different ways to encourage students to develop a passion for STEM. There is STEM framework. There is a lot of, I have seen a lot of shift towards maker space and, technological robotics labs and so on. But, what differs with a STEAM lab or a STEM lab is it includes everything what is being taught as individual. And of course, this robotics lab or a maker space lab is focused on only one particular skill, where they are doing design, design thinking or construction, or even let's say coding. But STEAM involves everything, and if they are not aware of this science and math concept, which easily integrate with these latest technology, then it will be very hard if we are doing a solo robotics lab, or even a maker space. So of course, I'll be going through these points, and these are very important points. Why STEM labs offer, why to build a STEM lab, and I'll be explaining more about what exactly the STEM labs are, and how we can, a lot of teachers and schools fail because fail to adopt a STEM lab, and what are the failures which we will talk about. But now we are talking about why should we build a STEM lab. Of course, STEM labs offer collaborative working spaces. Collaboration is vital STEM concept, where the students have to learn how to lead, how to be effective in groups. Whenever I am taking a session, I usually, allow students to work in groups, because when you are, working in any company, you have to work with different type of people. Maybe someone will be very good at modeling, someone may be very good at designing, someone may be very good at coding. So it gives that entire feel of 21st century workspace, where they are collaborating with each other. And this entire this collaborating working space, and creating a student centered learning environment is an integral part of STEM labs. STEM labs also provide practical experiences. Usually, whenever we do STEM labs as a company, or whenever I suggest to schools, to do STEM labs, we always, pick and choose instructors who are actually experts in their field, and who has a special focus on teaching. So that entire thing will give them the hands-on experience, and understanding from an actual STEM person who has involved in a STEM career. It will make their experience be a lot. They can share a lot of experiences. They can tell what had happened, what problems they had faced, how did they create a solution, how was the main. So this will also pique interest in students' interest towards STEM career. Also, STEM labs help attract underrepresented groups. So another big part of STEM initiative is that particularly girls, or a lot of students who are not privileged to school. So STEM offers these, can inspire these underrepresented groups. So if someone is educated or getting a hands-on experience in a STEM lab, whether it's a girl or someone who cannot afford education, they STEM labs are actually welcoming environment for every student, whoever wants to participate. So every girl get their especially they don't want to usually get involved in coding, but if with a STEM lab they actually get to do experiments, and they can easily understand which direction they would like to go. And that will actually help in reducing the gap between men and women in these STEM careers at this moment. So the more interest we provide to these underrepresented groups, the more they will come out with their own so it makes it more welcoming for anyone with interest, rather than just the best and brightest, and which is one of the biggest problem with this robotics. And so only the best and the brightest ones are the ones who get appreciated. But STEAM Labs offers an environment where everyone is welcome, and it is more on to increase the interest. Okay. Of course, optimal learning environments produce smoother learning gaps, which is again an interesting thing. So the entire learning environment, whether it's wallpaper or the designs which the students have done, can be put on maybe you can have interactive displays, and what students have done, a area where the students can brainstorm. So all this environment, the entire learning environment which you create, will increase their interest, and that learning curve which they have, which usually in the classroom is a very boring setup where students are just listening to teachers. It can help them to focus more, and then automatically the learning curve will increase. STEM Labs uses flexibility to create more opportunities for hands-on experiences. So this entire thing, STEM Labs, provide flexibility in mind to expand to its potential. So a lot of students, can move on from, let's say a worksheet to maybe a device. to understand, note down what they are doing. If we are introducing a STEM lab, maybe because of budget constraint we can't have a lot of technology, but we can, there is always an flexibility to improve or expand the STEM labs facilities. So that again is a very helpful manner where STEM labs can help schools. So maybe budget constraint, maybe 1 2 years they can't, but eventually they can afford more area room for maybe robotic obstacle courses and so on. So they can integrate a lot more. STEM labs provide equipment for all learning levels. So usually the misconception is STEM lab is meant for intermediate or advanced students, or even starting from middle school students. But nowadays there are a lot of resources which are made of plastic or wooden, and it's very safe for students. And even the whenever they have to be programmed, also the commands are used in by students is such easy, and it's block based, that they can learn the coding concept, and they are not actually happy having to learn a lot of coding, text based learning or program, and so on. So students can easily build, program, and do, and they can progress as they want of any age group starting from kindergarten as well. Of course, STEM lab support pedagogy. uh, so I mean, we as a company also, we believe in the pedagogy what STEM labs offer. So the main idea of STEM lab is not for using technology for the sake of it. The main idea of STEM lab is to encourage collaboration, projects based learning, and if we can have minimal technology, that is also good enough at the start, because technology must not be used to show off or make it more attractive. And a lot of schools and a lot of vendors offer a lot of these technologies to fool the schools. So, but the main idea is that the STEM labs should support the pedagogy which the school wants. So it is about encouraging. It is about creating, initiating the curiosity in students. And lastly, just the last point, why we should build a STEM lab is because it will embrace geeks. All of us must have seen, watched movies like Social Network, Steve Jobs, and these movies have made, nerds look cooler. And, you have seen movies with super intelligence, creativity, and how these, how an Iron Man is considered, compared to the, and you can see the fan following based on these characters as well. So a lot of students now, because of the geek culture, have more interest in STEM, and they would want the school to have something where they can embrace their geekness. They want to learn, and how these spaces can accommodate their ideas. So this is how we can integrate it. Now coming to the point where uh, we are talking about STEM labs, there are of course a lot of benefits, but the major issue with STEM labs not working is the fear of failure. So of course, in any scientific study, whether it's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or arts, even the entire this persistent of student is what is very important. And this is what our schools and education system should promote. Scientific study, we would want students to be persistent. If they fail, it's okay, you can try again. So a lot of course there is time restriction, and a lot of emphasis is given on successful projects, but we should also give the equal importance, and we should embrace their entire iteration. It didn't work, you can repeat it again. And this ability is not explored by STEM instructors. So of course, as I mentioned, this is mainly because of the time constraint, or a lot of students are accommodated in one lab, so a lot of students cannot reach that. And whoever gets a successful project, we sit and clap. But what about the ones who have tried, and maybe their projects were halfway done, or even if the prototype is not made? So it actually, we should signify the fear of failure, and we should tackle that, because that is what restricting students to reach their the extremeness which they can, of greatness which they can reach. And of course, this entire fear of failure has, by the National Science Foundation research collaborators have, found out that, this fear of failure, which is interplay of emotion and cognitive cognition, occur when a student believes that maybe they not be able to meet the needs of an achievement context. And this achievement context is provided by whom? It is mainly by the school itself. If we cannot encourage, we should not discourage as well. So this is where, a lot of STEM lab fail. Another reason of failure of STEM labs is because a lot of resources have this, predefined, instructions which the students can follow. And what do we expect from following instructions? They will just, do the steps as it is, and they will create a model. Or even if they are doing a scientific investigation, they will do an experiment as written in the journal. And then what do we expect from a student? Where is the opportunity for them to hypothesize? So I always, as a STEM educator, would always, reject the fact that if a student is asking for instruction, that means we have failed as an instructor. We would want students to try at least. If they are trying once, twice, thrice, if they are failing, it's okay. We should just give them and encourage them to, try that entire iteration process till they get that, persistence of trying. And since schools are talking about failure, and every student has that mentality now of, they might fear of, how they will fail. So I have taken out some tweets from, and this was a big movement in all over the world, how failing in STEM is not actually the end of the world. So we should actually let our, young people know that, failing miserably in science, or if you make mistake, it is okay. It's part of the job. You don't have to. Same, even you are, as I as an instructor can make a mistake. I as an engineer would make mistake a lot of times. And I mean, this is actually a learning curve for everyone. So even I found this first tweet very interesting, which is, this is a scientist who was analyzing some space rocks. And when he was discovering, he found something organic, and he thought it is something related to, maybe external life or things like that. Maybe there is a, hope for aliens. But later on, he came to know that, the organic, what he found was actually the nylon bag where he had stored these space rocks. So you can see, even scientists make mistakes. It's okay to understand and, get away with that fact that, we can find out, failures. As I wanted to also, show everyone that, failures are nothing. It is just a way to learn. And I will be sharing about some of the failures in my STEM lab whenever I, take STEM or science classes, and what all, how we are turning these failures into an accomplishment. Of course, you must be, a lot of teachers might be teachers here, have been doing for a long time. And, STEM might be a very confusing word and a very difficult at this moment. But, even small things which we start off, which will be, how we can take it forward. It is always so. Even in my STEM sessions, it is not always terrific. We did a lot of failure moments, and I want to, share that humorous side of the STEAM labs, which, how we failed and how we learned from these failures as well. So we all know the Newton's law. Of course, we know that, we as as an educator, we would want students to understand and find out what a Newton's law is. And the idea was there, students have to test the Newton's law of motion, where, more force applied is more distance will, the object will travel. So we had given, of course, this is for a younger age students. So we asked students to, find out your way how to apply force to a little toy car. And I was expecting students would push the car lightly, hard, even medium, and they would even throw it as well, just to, prove the Newton's law of motion. But, I was expecting, the walls of the STEAM lab are going to be crashed with a lot of cars, but that didn't happen. Of course, this, in my head, I wanted the students to, instead of pushing, I wanted to pull, using a ruler, and then, we can find out if, how much distance it goes. But the entire this session was a complete failure because there are too many uncontrollable variables. it depends on which person is pulling, how much he's pulling, how much the friction of the mat they are using at, and so on. So of course, the takeaway from this entire failure of this entire session was, we had a great discussion about variables. So we don't, at a very young age, if we introduce through the failures, we are learning a lot of things. We learn now that, okay, there is something called friction, which is going to oppose the force. And whenever we are, doing any pull or push movement, there should be actually a method of, controlling the variables, because we wouldn't know how much force we had applied. So such kind of things is what, I would want to share. And, that is one of the takeaways I got from this particular lesson. The next one is also on measurements and chemical changes. And this activity was a very fun, interesting activity, because students had to make cupcakes, and we were learning about measurement ratios and physical and chemical changes. If we bake, what happens? So the idea was students have to test different ingredients, add different ratios, how much amount of baking soda and so on, adding this much amount of food color, what it is going to do. So they were actually trying and making ingredient to make best cupcake. Why would I call it a failure? Because we actually got to eat the cupcake. The takeaway was, of course, though we could eat it and the activity was very fun, the takeaway was, whenever we are doing a chemical reaction, students know that, that chemical reaction has to happen perfectly. If you add certain things in an extra ratio, especially the baking soda, I still clearly remember all the students who had added slightly more than one pinch of baking soda, they had a fluffy cake, but it was all bitter. So you can take a lot of takeaways from such kind of activities. This is another activity which I had done, which is on circuits. I spent hours and hours of time just to create lab sheets, for students to understand circuits, how the connection works. I even, did a lot of clip art, how the sheets would look, and I was very happy with the, sheet. But, as when we did the activity, of course, the students did it in all in 4 or 5 minutes, the entire lab sheet. The entire effort of creating the lab sheet was gone in 5 minutes. And students already knew so much about circuits that, the lessons, what we put in the thing. So what we did is, okay, so you go on, hook up, parallel series circuit. I asked them to start exploring. It's okay. We are free to use this circuit. You're free to use all the, everything which comes with the circuit kit. And the takeaway, of course, this was a collective takeaway, of course. 105 batteries later, we came together. We found out, it took exactly 5 batteries to make one bulb explode. And it was interesting takeaway, because usually we talk about, okay, how many batteries is required to glow a bulb. So but we found out that rather the opposite, how many it takes to explode the bulb. And we understood, if you are not operating a lot on open and closed switches, if you're not doing a lot of batteries won't last. And that's why we needed 105 for a group of 30. And once the students were dealing with 105 batteries, it was very difficult to know which one is dead, which one is not. So they found out a method, they can hook up a buzzer and find out if the battery is dead or not. So that way they can easily find out if the buzzer sound is reducing, it's dimming. So they can understood that this battery is about to die out, and they would not use that. And so such kind of things. So the major takeaway is that, when we are trying, students want to explore, and they are exploring much more. It is much more fun than the lab sheet and the instruction which you have given. So another interesting fact about the microscope, which I had done for middle school, where the students are learning, how to operate a digital microscope, a compound microscope, and how to prepare an onion slide. And this is such a classic, science experiment, and what could go wrong. So the major thing was, students, when they were actually asked to watch on the eyepiece, they were actually mistaking their eyelashes for the plant cells, and they were like, "Sir, this had some black entity or a foreign body. I don't know what should be doing." So on next closer look, I understood that they were actually looking at their eyelashes, because then it took around 15 minutes to find out why they would see something black in an onion peel. But students have come up, to avoid their entire confusion. They have found out, they can take the tabs, they can take image on the eyepiece itself, they can magnify it much better, and they can see the onion cell, the entire cell wall, so cleanly, which they would not have, and they wouldn't have that confusion while they are watching with their own eye. So this is the biggest takeaway from this entire failure series which I just showed, is that you can have tons of failures. Every STEM labs will have tons of failure, but the entire thing is so fun, and it is just giving that students an opportunity to discover why and what is the science behind it, and that is what real learning is. We don't want to show this, if I change this, this is going to happen. I would want students to rather find out, if I don't do this, if I change completely something else which is not written, why, what would happen, and what this real failures are. So coming back to the point, why should we actually go on with the STEM lab, and why is this the right time? Because of course, a lot of our client schools also, we offered a lot of online STEM labs which offered the similar aspect, but students were finding it very difficult to grasp from an online lab or an even online content. So a lot of schools in Middle East, especially, they had hybrid classes. Some of them had come to school. They were getting exposed to the STEM lab. Somewhere at home, they were doing the virtual labs. So these are some of the points which I found out through a survey. Lot of schools, students who are at home, they felt they are missing out on valuable skills. Even though they are doing the virtual activity, the similar one, they are missing out on the valuable skills, and they feel that they would have found this the same skill if they had done it in hands on it by doing it. They felt they are falling behind by from their peers who are taking their classes well while in person. Of course, this entire world virtual labs is to simulate the hands-on experience, but these labs fall short teaching students the skills needed to adapt when an experiment fails. These virtual labs have the environment where you can do experiments, but what happens if I add so much, or what if it doesn't work? So where is that real experience of failures? Where is it? So of course, during COVID we didn't have any opportunity, but when we are coming back from COVID, and hopefully it stays that way, we would want a STEAM lab. Students would want a STEAM lab where they can actually operate, in much more in hands-on way. Of course, in any lab, a student would get more exposure if they are looking at any model, or they are touching their model or building the model. And this, even though they are at virtual environment, there is no sense of peer support, or there is no collaborative environment. So keeping a STEM lab or STEAM lab, it will help students to have that peer support and this collaborative environment. Now, I have put up some points for everyone to find out why we should have, and what can we do to have a successful STEAM lab. And I've provided a summary of certain individual successes, barriers, and strategies which we can do, and what can we do to avoid those barriers, and how to take these successes from others, and you can improve on that. So of course, if you are a teacher and you notice in your city, or maybe the neighboring school might have a STEAM lab offered there, so you can go to their open houses. You can just go and visit and see what exactly the students are doing. You normally in open houses, students are asked to do a lot of projects which they can showcase to their parents, their teachers, and even outsiders. So you can just do a visit and understand how STEAM labs are affecting, and you can compare their knowledge compared to your students who are not exposed to STEAM labs. Second, you can follow a lot of STEAM experts in social media. In a lot of companies have a lot of subscription models where they will provide free lesson plans. So you can just follow, and you can celebrate their successes. These are all proven lesson plans which works in a STEAM lab. So you can work on those, and that is probably one of the first steps you can do. You don't have to create anything on your own. It is very simple. Or you can look at some vendor who does it for you. You don't have to even worry about it, who will take care of the lab, who will facilitate the students, and their entire environment can be safe for the students, and they learn much more than learning in their classrooms. And I would always recommend all schools to always start small. Every school have budget constraints. But if you show the success of a small lab, it could be a composite lab, it could be a movable lab as well. You bring certain lab equipment to your classroom and you can shuffle it between classes. That also works. If you show the school management that there is enough success in a STEM lab, even though it is a temporary one or a small one, the school management is bound to always take up a STEAM lab, because they have real live data where they can compare the students who are actually exposed to the STEAM lab. These are some of the barriers. Of course, teachers able to deliver the program. A lot of school management expect STEAM lab to be run by teachers. That is going to be a very difficult process. Of course, it experience matters, and if you have an expert who can immediately take in, that is much better, compared to usually teachers take around 3 to 4 years just to understand all the resources, what are the complexities of these resources, and what all problems students can face when they are working with these resources. So of course, teachers, all our science and math teachers are equally equipped, but that entire experience of the real world matters a lot. So you can either look for an expert, or look for other vendors who are offering STEAM labs for your school, and you can have them take the initiative and let them improvise and incorporate in your school. Of course, the other barrier is the school structure. When I mean school structure, not only the physical infrastructure, it is also about the costing, and the availability of when can be used, how, and also how many students can even visit the lab. So all of this matters, and this is one of the major barriers, which as I said, if you start small, it will slowly the school management will start seeing the need for it. And of course, now also when you see the success of other schools, or if you see others experts who are looking and providing such kind of STEM labs, you always have a database how the students are compared to the last year when they were using STEM labs. So of course, that barrier can also be resolved if they see there is enough benefit for the students. Technological advances, of course, as I mentioned, you don't have to use technology for showing off. If the budget doesn't constrain, you don't need it. I have seen a lot of schools in other having 3D monitors, holographic views of their smart board. But what does it help students in? They are just visualizing. Is it actually helping them in getting an interest in STEM, or they're improving their motor skills, or their curiosity, or they're actually doing some kind of a problem solving? It's not. It's just for visualizing. So technology, of course, it plays a very big role, and it will keep on changing. So you don't have to worry about technology at the initial stages. Once and for you start a STEAM lab very small, you can improve your STEAM lab and increase the potential of the STEAM lab. And of course, strategy wise, of course, there are a lot more. I've just shared a few. One is the most important strategy, which I believe as an educator is, you have to include the parents and the students in the strategy development of the STEAM lab. If whenever you have chance, if a teacher, or we usually do such kind of open houses, the parents see what the students are doing. Parents are completely unaware what the students are doing in the lab. So it is always better to take pictures, provide newsletters, and involve parents in certain surveys, what students can do and what should be doing, what can be done, and what kind of strategies you can adapt. So every student is unique, every parent has a unique thought process, but you can collectively find out that strategy which makes sense for everyone. So you can involve students, take their feedback, take their suggestions, what they need to do. If they cannot complete something in one STEAM lab period, they can continue it for the next lab period. And I mean, you can do a lot of these strategies. If the students feel that this activity was boring, it's okay. We are taking that feedback, we are getting the suggestion, and we can try and improve maybe next year. So this is where I see the strategy we can develop is much better. The most important thing about a STEAM lab, as I mentioned, is you have to let students explore. Don't give them instructions as especially with robotic kids, they have instructions. You can build a color sorter, you can build this, you can build a robot which follows a line, but eventually they are just following steps. Where is the their entire process of failing, trying again and again. So I would always suggest every school, even whenever we are working as a vendor so multiple schools as well, we would want students to explore. And we as an organization also don't believe a lot into giving instruction and overfeeding students with a lot of information and what they can do instead of them discovering on their own. Yeah, this brings to the end of the topic. I would take some questions now, if the time permits. I think so. We have exceeded some time, and there was some delay also because of the technical issues. But if there any school school admin department, HODs or teachers, educators, anyone has any questions about STEAM labs and what we can do to implement one, you can always ask on the chat. Or you can unmute yourself and let me know. You can ask me directly as well. Any questions? Okay, seems like there are no questions, and I hope it was an informative session, and I could share my experience on the STEAM labs and the effectiveness of STEAM lab, and how we can increase or leverage the power of a STEAM lab in this current education scenario. So I would request all of you to if you want, you can still leave a message. If you have any confusion, you can always find me in LinkedIn. My name is Arif Rahman. Or you can even ask the webinar. You can drop in an email finding out if you have any questions. We are happy to answer as well. So with that, I would end this webinar. If there is any questions still, or you can see some people entering. Yes, so there are some upcoming webinars coming on, right. So there are some upcoming webinars on webinar which you on our website, which you can click and register in advance. There are much more important issues which we are talking about, so you can definitely register to them. With this, I would take your leave, and I hope all of you enjoyed, and I hope it was a very informative session for all of you, and you could take away certain points which I would had wanted to present. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you all have a great day. Bye bye.